Lancaster was 17 years old. She had long brown hair and green eyes. She loved to read books about history and ancient places. Since she was a little girl, Elena had always been fascinated by the past. Her grandfather, Arthur Lancaster, was a historian who traveled the world studying ancient cultures. Elena's father also worked in history, but her grandfather had a special place in her heart. She spent many summers at his big house in the countryside, where she could explore and listen to his stories about faraway lands. Arthur Lancaster was known for his wisdom and love for history. He was always teaching Elena about things like old cities, ancient ruins, and lost treasures. His house was full of books, maps, and artifacts from his travels. Elena had always been amazed by his collection, but when her grandfather passed away, Elena felt a deep sadness. She missed his stories, and the house seemed so quiet without him. Even though her grandfather was no longer there, Elena still visited the old house. She wanted to feel close to him again. She spent most of her time in his study, reading the books he had left behind. But one afternoon, Elena decided to explore the house in a different way. She wanted to go upstairs to the attic. She had never been there alone before. The attic was always locked when her grandfather was alive. He told her it was full of old things that didn't matter. But today, Elena felt a strong desire to explore it. She had heard strange noises from upstairs before, and she wondered if there was something special hidden in the attic. Elena thought that maybe her grandfather had left a secret for her to discover. She carefully made her way up the wooden stairs. The air was cool and smelled of dust and old books. When she reached the top, she found the attic door slightly open. She pushed the door open slowly and stepped inside. The room was filled with boxes, old furniture, and piles of newspapers. But one thing caught her attention immediately: a large wooden chest in the far corner of the room. It was old and covered in dust. There were strange carvings on the wood. Elena's heart began to race. She had never seen this chest before. Her grandfather had never mentioned it. She felt that it might hold something important, something her grandfather had hidden away. Elena couldn't resist the temptation to open it. Elena knelt down in front of the chest. Her hands trembled slightly as she touched the old wood. The carvings on the chest were mysterious, symbols that she had never seen before. They looked like something out of an ancient storybook. Elena felt a rush of excitement. She had always loved discovering new things, but this was different. It felt like she was about to uncover a secret, something that had been hidden for many years. The lock on the chest was rusty and old, but Elena didn't give up. She found a small metal key lying on the floor nearby. She picked it up carefully and tried it in the lock. To her surprise, the key fit perfectly. The lock opened with a quiet click. Elena slowly lifted the lid, holding her breath. Inside the chest, she found several old letters. They were yellow with age, and the writing was hard to read. Elena picked up the letters and carefully examined them. They looked important, but there was something else in the chest that caught her attention. At the very bottom, hidden under the letters, was a small leather-bound book. Elena's heart skipped a beat. She carefully picked up the book. It was old, the cover worn and soft. She opened it, and the first thing she saw was her grandfather's name written in elegant handwriting: Arthur Lancaster. Elena's hands shook as she flipped through the pages. The book was a diary, and it was filled with stories about her grandfather's travels and discoveries. But as she read, she noticed something strange. The diary was not just about history. It was about a secret search for something very important. Elena couldn't believe her eyes. Her grandfather had been searching for something hidden, something that no one knew about, and now she was holding the key to that mystery in her hands. The first entry was dated July 12th, 1942, and it read, "I have finally found the map. It is hidden where no one will think to look. If I do not return, let this journal be the key to the truth." Elena's mind raced. What map? What truth? Why had her grandfather never told her about this? She needed to know more. She continued reading, eager to discover what secrets lay hidden in the pages of the diary. Elena sat on the floor of the attic, holding the diary. Her grandfather, Arthur Lancaster, had written about something very important, a map. She read the first part of the diary again. "I have finally found the map. It is hidden where no one will think to look. If I do not return, let this journal be the key to the truth." Elena felt confused and excited. What was this map? Why had her grandfather hidden it? She had so many questions. She wanted to find the answers. The more Elena read, the more she understood. The diary wasn't just about history. It was about a big secret. Her grandfather had spent his life searching for something. That something was a treasure, but not just any treasure. It was something very special. The map would show her where to find it. Elena needed to figure out where the map was. The next part of the diary talked about one of her grandfather's travels. He had gone to a city in the desert. There, he found an old building with strange symbols on the walls. Elena remembered the carvings on the chest. The symbols were the same. Her grandfather had been looking for something important, and now she was looking for it too. Elena kept reading. The next page was dated October 2nd, 1942. It said, "I have found a clue that will lead me to the map. It is hidden in a place no one would ever think to look. If I do not return, let this journal be the key to the truth. Elena, I trust you to find the map. It is your destiny." Elena's heart beat faster. Her grandfather had written directly to her. He had known she would find the diary one day. He wanted her to continue his search. Elena closed the diary and thought for a moment. She had to find the map. She couldn't just stay here. It was clear that her grandfather had hidden it somewhere in the house. But where? She had already looked in the attic, but maybe there was something she missed. Maybe the study would have clues. She had spent a lot of time there with her grandfather, but she never thought to look for anything special. Elena stood up. She knew she had to act fast. She had to keep looking. Elena left the attic and walked downstairs. The house was very quiet. She could hear her own footsteps as she moved. She held the diary close to her chest. Her grandfather had trusted her to find the map. She had to keep searching. She stopped in front of the study door. This was her grandfather's favorite room. It was full of books, papers, and old objects from his travels. Elena took a deep breath and opened the door. The room looked the same as always. The big wooden desk was in the middle of the room. The bookshelves covered the walls. There were maps and old pictures on the desk. Everything reminded her of her grandfather. She missed him so much, but she also felt close to him here. Elena walked to the desk and sat down. She opened the diary again and read the last words carefully. "The map is hidden where no one will think to look." She looked around the room. Where could it be? She thought about all the places her grandfather kept important things. Maybe in one of the books. Maybe inside a drawer. She started searching. She checked the desk drawers first. They were full of old letters and notebooks. She looked through them, but there was nothing about a map. Then she moved to the bookshelves. She took out some books and flipped through the pages. Still nothing. Elena sighed and sat back in the chair. She felt frustrated. The answer was here, but she couldn't see it. She looked at the room again. Then her eyes stopped on something strange. There was a small painting on the wall behind the desk. It was a picture of an old castle. Elena had seen it before, but now she noticed something new. The frame looked a little loose. She stood up and touched the frame. It moved slightly. Elena's heart started beating faster. She carefully pulled the painting off the wall. Behind it, there was a small metal box attached to the wall. She reached out and opened it. Inside the box, there was an envelope. Elena took it out and opened it with shaky hands. Her eyes widened. It was the map. Elena stared at the map, her fingers tracing the faded lines. The symbols on it looked familiar. She had seen something like this before, but where? Then she remembered. The chest in the attic had similar carvings. Maybe they were connected. She placed the map on the desk and opened the diary again. She flipped through the pages, looking for any mention of a map. Finally, she found another entry from her grandfather. The key is hidden in plain sight. The path is marked by time itself. If you follow the past, you will find the future. Elena read the words again. What did her grandfather mean? The key is hidden in plain sight. She looked around the study. Could the key be here, in this very room? She stood up and examined everything carefully. Books, papers, maps, nothing seemed unusual. Then her eyes landed on the large grandfather clock in the corner. It had always been there, ticking softly, unnoticed, but now it felt important. Elena walked over to the clock. She ran her hand along the wood, searching for anything strange. Then she felt it, a small groove on the side. She pressed it, and with a soft click, a hidden compartment opened at the bottom of the clock. Inside, there was a small metal key. Elena gasped. Her grandfather had hidden something inside the clock all this time. She picked up the key and turned back to the map. Was this the key to finding the hidden place? She didn't know yet, but one thing was certain. She was closer to the truth than ever before. Elena held the small metal key in her hand. It felt cold and heavy. She knew this was important, but she still didn't know what it opened. She looked at the map again, hoping for a clue. The symbols, the red X, and the message from her grandfather, it all meant something. But what? She thought about the diary. Maybe there was more. She turned the pages carefully, reading every word. Then she found something new. The door to the past is locked, but the key is always near. Trust your heart and you will find the way. A locked door? Could it be somewhere in the house? Elena stood up and walked around the study. She checked the desk, the bookshelves, and even the floor, but there was no locked door. Then she remembered something. There was a small wooden door in the basement. She had seen it before, but it was always locked. Her grandfather never talked about it, and she never asked. Could this be it? Elena took a deep breath and left the study. The house was quiet as she walked down the stairs. The basement door was at the end of the hallway. She hesitated for a moment, then turned the handle. It opened with a creak. The basement was dark and cool. Dust floated in the air as she stepped inside. She reached for the light switch, but it didn't work. Taking out her phone, she used the flashlight to see, and there it was, the small wooden door. Elena's heart pounded. She stepped closer and placed the key in the lock. It fit perfectly. With a soft click, the lock opened. She pushed the door open and gasped. Inside, there was a small stone staircase leading downward. Where did it go? What was hidden down there? Elena took a deep breath. She had come this far. She couldn't stop now. She stepped forward and began to descend. Elena's footsteps echoed as she walked down the stone staircase. The air was cold and a faint smell of earth surrounded her. She held her phone's flashlight in front of her, but the darkness seemed endless. After a few more steps, she reached the bottom. A large wooden door stood in front of her. It looked ancient, with strange symbols carved into it, symbols just like the ones on the map and the chest. Her heart pounded as she reached for the handle. With a deep breath, she turned it. The door creaked open, revealing a hidden room. Elena stepped inside and gasped. The room was filled with old artifacts, books, and maps. In the center, there was a stone table. On it, a small metal box rested, covered in dust. She walked over and carefully opened the box. Inside there was a letter, written by her grandfather. Elena, if you are reading this, then you have found the truth. This is my life's work. The real treasure is not gold or jewels. It is knowledge. What you find here will change everything. But be careful. Some secrets are meant to stay hidden. Elena looked around the room, her mind racing. What had her grandfather discovered? What secrets did this place hold? She knew one thing for sure. This was only the beginning. With the diary in one hand and the map in the other, she smiled. She was ready for whatever came next, because some mysteries are worth the risk.